They thought it was just another ordinary school day, until the principal's voice cut through the hallway like a knife. By the end of the afternoon, a student would be on his knees in the school bathroom, scrubbing the floor with his bare hands, humiliated in front of everyone. And the worst part? It wasn't even his fault. Stay with me, because this story will take you from disbelief to outrage, and by the end, you'll be questioning what real justice looks like. Make sure to like this video, subscribe, and don't blink. The truth is about to spill. The sharp, bitter smell of disinfectant filled the bathroom like an invisible fog, stinging Liam's nostrils until his eyes watered. The floor beneath him was cold and slick, the dampness seeping through the knees of his jeans. His palms, raw and trembling, pressed against the grimy tiles as he tried to keep the brush from slipping out of his blistered fingers. Every scrape echoed in the tiled chamber, a steady rhythm that made him feel more like a machine than a person. From the corner of his eye, he could see them, the silhouettes in the doorway. 3 boys from the soccer team, arms crossed, leaning casually against the frame as though watching a street performance. Their low murmurs were punctuated by short bursts of laughter, the kind of cruel snickers that carried far in the dead air. Someone pulled out a phone. The mechanical click of the camera shutter sliced through the silence like a blade. Liam clenched his jaw, refusing to look up. The humiliation burned deeper than the ache in his knees or the sting in his hands. He could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down on him, suffocating him, making every breath heavier. Somewhere down the hall, Principal Harris's deep, unhurried voice rolled toward him like distant thunder. "Make sure it's spotless, Liam. You're not leaving until it shines." The words were delivered with the casual cruelty of someone giving an order at a drive-through. No acknowledgement of the filth, the stench, or the fact that Liam had no gloves, no proper tools, just his bare hands and a dirty scrub brush that looked like it had survived a war. A drop of something, water, bleach, he didn't know, slid down the inside of his wrist. He froze, then wiped it on his jeans, his skin itching where the liquid had touched. He wanted to speak, to defend himself, to shout that this wasn't right, but his voice stayed trapped in his throat. And beneath all of it, an unbearable question pulsed louder than his heartbeat. How did I end up here? 2 weeks earlier, Liam's life had been ordinary. Not perfect, never. Perfect, but predictable in its own way. At 17, he had mastered the art of invisibility, slipping through crowded hallways without catching the attention of teachers, who had too many names to remember, or students who thrived on tearing someone else down. Liam was tall but thin, with dark hair that always seemed one day overdue for a trim. He wore the same faded gray hoodie, so often it had practically molded to his shoulders. His sneakers were frayed at the edges, the soles smoothed down from years of wear. Some kids wore clothes to make a statement. Liam wore his like armor. He was good at art, not the kind that won competitions, but the kind that filled entire sketchbooks with worlds no one else would ever see. Tiny streets, crooked houses, characters with wide, searching eyes. When the teachers droned on about equations or dates from history, Liam's pen danced quietly in the margins, breathing life into places that didn't exist. To his friends, a small circle of fellow outliers, he was the guy who never had the loudest voice but always listened when it mattered. Home was a different kind of battlefield. His mom, Michelle, worked back-to-back shifts at a diner and a cleaning service, her hands always smelling faintly of lemon-scented polish. His dad had been gone for years, a ghost Liam didn't bother chasing anymore. That left Liam as the de facto caretaker for Emily, his 12-year-old sister who was equal parts chatterbox and trouble magnet. He packed her lunches, made sure her homework was done, and sometimes, when Michelle's paychecks were late, stretched a single box of pasta across 3 dinners. Life wasn't easy, but it had a rhythm. School, work, home. Draw when you can. Keep your head down. Don't make waves. And it might have stayed that way, quiet, manageable, if it weren't for the fact that Liam, without even realizing it, was about to step into the crosshairs of Principal Harris. Principal Harris had a presence that filled a room before he even stepped inside. Tall, broad-shouldered, and always dressed in a perfectly pressed suit, he moved through the school halls like a man walking across his own kingdom. His shoes never seemed to scuff, His tie was always centered, and his posture was so rigid it made everyone around him straighten theirs without realizing it. But it wasn't his appearance that commanded attention. It was his eyes, sharp, unblinking, and always searching for the smallest hint of disobedience. Students swore he could spot a smirk from 50 feet away, and when his gaze locked on you, it felt like standing under a spotlight with nowhere to hide. On paper, he was everything a school board could want. Test scores had gone up since he arrived. Discipline referrals were handled swiftly and effectively. Parents at PTA meetings praised him for restoring order to the school. But inside the building, when the doors were closed and the hallways emptied, there was another version of Harris, one that didn't care for second chances. Teachers learned early on that disagreeing with him in front of others was a quick way to find themselves reassigned to undesirable duties. Students knew better than to question his rules. It wasn't that he raised his voice. Harris didn't need to. His punishments were quiet, precise, and designed to leave a lasting sting. There was the time a freshman was made to stand outside in the rain for an entire lunch period because he'd been caught chewing gum in class, or when a senior who skipped detention was forced to write a 10-page essay on the consequences of defiance by hand and then read it aloud in front of the entire student council. To some, these stories were just rumors, exaggerated by teenagers who loved to make villains out of authority figures. But to others, the ones who had been on the receiving end, they weren't stories. They were warnings. Liam had heard those warnings. He'd even believed them. But he never thought he would be the one standing in Harris's shadow, realizing too late that the stories hadn't gone far enough. It started with a single word, not a curse, not an insult. Just too sure, it was third period, history class. The late autumn sun slanted in through the tall windows, making the dust in the air glow like drifting specks of gold. Liam sat near the back, his notebook open, doodles already creeping across the margins while Mr. Clark lectured about Reconstruction. Half the class was half asleep. The classroom door opened without a knock, and there he was, Principal Harris, his dark suit almost absorbing the sunlight. He didn't smile. He never smiled. His eyes swept the room until they landed on Liam. "Liam Harper," Harris said, his tone as flat as the floor. "Step into the hallway." A ripple went through the class, that sharp, collective inhale that always came when someone got singled out. Liam's stomach dropped. He couldn't remember doing anything wrong. He pushed his chair back slowly, every eye on him, and followed Harris into the empty corridor. The hallway was silent except for the faint hum of the lights. Harris stopped just a few feet from the door and turned to face him. "Do you know why you're here?" Harris asked. "No, sir," Liam said, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Harris's gaze narrowed. "When a staff member asks you to do something, you answer with yes, sir, or yes, ma'am. You do not answer with sure." Liam blinked. I didn't realize. That's exactly the problem," Harris cut in. "You don't realize. You think this is some kind of casual environment where you can respond however you like." Liam felt heat creeping up the back of his neck. "I wasn't trying to be disrespectful." Enough," Harris said, raising a hand. "Disrespect, whether intentional or not, will be addressed. You'll report to my office after last period. Do not be late." And with that, Harris turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing in the empty hall. Liam stood frozen, his heart pounding. It was ridiculous, absurd, even, all of this over the word sure when he went back inside. The whispers had already started. His friends looked at him with wide eyes, mouths silently asking, "What happened?" Liam just shook his head and slid back into his seat. But all through the rest of the day, a knot of unease grew tighter in his chest. He didn't know it yet, but that single word, careless, harmless, had just signed him up for the most humiliating day of his life. The final bell rang like a sentence being handed down. Liam moved through the thinning crowd with his backpack slung low and his stomach in knots. He passed the trophy case glossy plaques, polished metal's reflections of a school that looked perfect from the outside. Inside, his steps felt heavy, like each footfall had to push through tar. The principal's office sat at the end of a short corridor, one of those quiet wings where noise seemed to die on arrival. The secretary looked up when he entered. She was middle-aged, with soft eyes that flinched just a little when she saw his name on the sign-in clipboard. "You can go in," she murmured, voice low. Her fingertips hesitated over the phone, as if there was something she wanted to say and couldn't. Liam swallowed and pushed open the office door. Principal Harris didn't invite him to sit. He was already standing, jacket buttoned, posture military straight, a folder on his desk labeled with a neat printed strip, "Harper Liam." The blinds were half closed, slicing the late afternoon light into strict gray ladders across the floor. "Close the door," Harris said. Liam did. Harris didn't look up immediately. He clicked a pen, signed something, then finally raised his gaze, pinning Liam where he stood. "You were asked to comply with a simple expectation," Harris began, voice controlled, almost bored. "You responded with a dismissive sure. This is not a coffee shop. This is an institution. Respect is not optional here." "I didn't mean," Liam started, but Harris held up a hand. "Intent is irrelevant. Impact is what matters." He tapped the folder with 2 fingers. "This isn't your first brush with casual indifference. I've got a note here from last month. Teacher observed you sketching during instruction." Liam felt heat in his face. "I was taking notes. Sometimes notes do not look like comic books," Harris said sharply. "You've been allowed to drift. That ends today." He walked around the desk, slow and deliberate. Up close, Liam could see the flawless knot in the man's tie, the crisp crease in his trousers. Everything about him said control. "Consequences teach faster than speeches," Harris said. "So here's what will happen, Harper. You will report to the boys' bathroom by the West Gym immediately. You will clean it thoroughly, floors, stalls, sinks, mirrors. You will do so with your hands, no gloves. You will use the scrub brush and solution provided. You will remain until I inspect and deem it complete." Liam stared at him. For a second, the words didn't fit together. When they did, his chest tightened. "With my bare hands," he said. "Sir, that's not sanitary. I could get sick. That's not safe." "You think disrespect is safe?" Harris countered, a single eyebrow lifting. "You think breaking culture is without cost? Don't dramatize this. You will wash your hands when you're done." "I can serve detention," Liam tried, voice fraying. "I can write an apology. I'll clean with gloves." "Please," Harris's lips thinned. "I am not negotiating with a 17-year-old over discipline. Detention is for tardiness. Disrespect requires correction. Humility is learned through humble tasks. Humility isn't the same as—" Liam stopped himself. Pushing back was gasoline on a fire. Harris stepped even closer, until Liam could smell the faint bite of cologne under disinfectant. "You'll do this," he said, "or I will mark this as defiance. That means 3-day suspension, unexcused. It will appear on your record under insubordination. I'll contact your mother at her place of employment and explain why her son chose a suspension over a 30-minute cleaning task. Which option do you prefer?" The room seemed to shrink around Liam. He thought of his mom's face, tired and lined from double shifts. He thought of Emily waiting at the bus stop, the way she got small when things went wrong at home. A suspension would ripple through their lives like a dropped stone in shallow water, hitting everything. Liam's throat tightened. I'll clean it," he said, barely audible. "Good," Harris replied, as if the boy had chosen the right multiple-choice answer. He pulled a single-page form from the folder and set it on the desk. "Restorative Consequences Agreement." The words looked like a joke without a punchline. "Sign at the bottom." Liam scanned the paragraph, vague language about repairing harm to the community and ownership of behavior. There was a blank line for description of task filled in with Harris's tight handwriting. "Sanitation of boys' restroom, West Gym. Bare hands. Supervisor, Principal Harris." His stomach lurched. He signed. Harris straightened. "Leave your phone with Mrs. Danielson. No recording in the restroom. When you're finished, wash up and wait for me in the hallway for inspection. My phone, it's my only way to call my mom if you'll get it back." They exited together. The secretary, Mrs. Danielson, took the phone with an apologetic look. "I'll keep it right here," she whispered, tapping the drawer. "You'll be okay." Liam nodded, unable to answer. Harris led him through the side corridor toward the West Gym, their footsteps echoing in the sterile quiet. The building was in that lull between last bell and after-school rush. Just a handful of athletes and club kids drifting by. A few recognized Liam and did double takes. One of the soccer boys muttered, "Dude, what did you do?" Liam looked at the floor. They stopped at the bathroom by the exit doors, the one everyone avoided, because it always smelled faintly of sweat and bleach and something sour. Harris opened the door and gestured inside. A gray bucket sat in the middle of the tile with a bristled brush and a bottle of heavy-duty cleaner, whose label was half peeled and cautioned about skin irritation. There were no gloves. Paper towels overflowed a trash can. One of the stalls had a broken latch, hanging crooked. The mirror over the sinks wore a constellation of dried water spots. Harris folded his arms. "You have 1 hour," he said. "I'll return to inspect. Make sure the grout is white." He turned, then paused in the doorway. "And Murdoch Harper, when you're finished, you will thank me." Liam stared at him. "For what?" "For the lesson," Harris said, and left. The door swung shut with a heavy thud. For a long second, Liam stood frozen in the reek of cleaner and damp paper. His hands felt suddenly alien at the ends of his wrist stools someone else owned. He looked at the brush, at the bottle, at the cracked, grimy edges where tile met tile. The quiet Preston, heavy as a hand on the back of his neck. He rolled up his sleeves. The faucet sputtered, then steadied. Cold water ran over his fingers. The metal of the faucet bit his skin with its chill. He poured the cleaner into the bucket. The smell rose like a slap. Then he knelt, placed his bare palm on the wet tile, and began to scrub. The first drag of the brush across the floor sent a thin line of dirty water running toward the drain. It clung to his fingers, seeping under his nails, mixing the smell of bleach with something older, something sour that no amount of cleaner could erase. Liam tried to focus on the motion, push, pull, scrub, but the cold tile was already numbing his knees, and every second stretched like an hour. The sound of footsteps broke the steady rhythm. A pair of sneakers squeaked against the hallway floor. Then a voice, high-pitched, mocking, floated in through the doorway. Well, look who's the janitor now." It was Kyle, a junior on the soccer team, flanked by 2 of his friends. They leaned casually against the doorframe, blocking the light. Phones came out almost immediately. "What's the matter, Harper?" Kyle smirked. "Detention too easy for you." Liam didn't look up. He'd learned long ago that eye contact was gasoline for bullies, but the red dot of a recording light was already blinking in the corner of his vision. "Come on, say something for the camera," one of them urged. "Yeah, like, I'm sorry I disrespected the king of the school," another chimed in. A flush of heat rose in Liam's cheeks. His grip tightened on the brush until his knuckles whitened, but he kept scrubbing. The only sound was the harsh rasp of bristles over tile. "Pathetic," Kyle muttered, but his voice held that twisted satisfaction bullies got when they knew they'd found a crack in someone's armor. They laughed and drifted away, the echo of their sneakers bouncing down the hall. Liam's shoulders sagged. He leaned back on his heels for a moment, stretching his aching fingers. His skin was turning red where the cleaner had touched it. Tiny cuts, ones he hadn't even noticed before, stung like open flames. The bathroom door opened again. This time it was to freshmen, whispering loudly enough to be heard. One peeked in, gasped, and whispered, "Oh my God, is he actually?" Before they both dissolved into nervous laughter and disappeared. Word was spreading. He could feel it, the story growing and mutating as it passed from mouth to mouth, text to text. By tomorrow, half the school would have a version where he'd been caught doing something outrageous, something that deserved this. He dunked the brush back into the bucket, the water now a cloudy gray. The cleaner burned the cuts on his hands again, sharper this time. He imagined the bacteria, the germs, the invisible things crawling over his skin. His stomach turned. When the sound of heavy footsteps filled the hall, Liam knew it was Harris before the door even opened. The principal stepped inside, his eyes sweeping the room with military precision. "Still plenty of dirt in those corners," Harris said, pointing toward the far stall. "You've got 20 more minutes. Make them count." Liam stared at him, the words forming in his mind before he could stop them. "You enjoy this." But he swallowed them down. The price of speaking would be higher than the sting in his hands. Harris left as silently as he'd come. Liam went back to scrubbing, but the humiliation lingered, thick as the smell of bleach. clinging to him in a way he knew soap and water would never wash away. By the time Liam left the bathroom, his hands were red and raw. The skin along his knuckles cracked in tiny fissures. He walked down the hall with his sleeves tugged over his palms, trying to hide them from view. But the whispers had already begun. It started small, 2 kids leaning against lockers, murmuring just loud enough for him to catch words like bathroom and bare hands. Then came the sideways glances, the quick bursts of laughter cut short when he passed by. By the end of the day, it wasn't whispers anymore. It was stares, full-on, unblinking stares. At home that night, Emily noticed first. "What happened to your hands?" she asked, eyes wide as he set down a plate of spaghetti. Liam mumbled something about helping clean up at school, but the way she looked at him told him she didn't believe it. His mom came home too tired to press for details, but the faint crease between her eyebrows deepened when she saw him flexing his fingers under the running tap. The next morning, the story had evolved. By the time Liam stepped through the main doors, the school was a living rumor mill. Someone claimed he'd vandalized the gym. Another said he'd gotten into a screaming match with a teacher. And of course, there were the videos, shaky, grainy clips taken from the bathroom doorway, already making rounds in group chats. One showed him bent over a stall floor, scrubbing furiously while a voice off-screen laughed. "Look at him. No gloves. During lunch, Mrs. Carter from the English department stopped him in the hallway. Her voice was soft, but there was an edge to it. Liam, did Mr. Harris, did he really make you clean like that?" Liam hesitated. "Yeah." She frowned, glancing around as if checking who might be listening. "That's unusual. If you need to talk to someone." But before she could finish, Harris rounded the corner. Her expression tightened, and she walked away without another word. By midweek, even some of the parents had caught wind of it. The mother of one of Emily's friends approached Michelle at the diner. "Is it true what they're saying about Liam?" she asked, almost in a whisper. "Because if it is, that's not right. My husband says he could have gotten sick." Michelle didn't answer right away. She didn't like making scenes in public, but the knot in her stomach had been tightening since she first saw Liam's hands. That night, she asked him to tell her exactly what had happened. When he did, her face went pale. "That's not discipline," she said quietly. "That's humiliation." The next morning, she called the school. The secretary transferred her to Harris's voicemail. By the end of the day, there was still no reply. And somewhere between the staff room and the parents' Facebook group, the whispers turned into murmurs, and the murmurs into something sharper, questions. Why was the principal handing out punishments that sounded more like hazing? Why was a minor made to handle chemicals without protection? And most importantly, what exactly had Liam done to deserve it? The truth, of course, was far less dramatic than the rumors and far more infuriating. It was Mrs. Carter who finally connected the dots. The English teacher had been quietly collecting details all week, small pieces of overheard conversations, fragments of staff room chatter, and most importantly, the version of events she'd gotten from Mr. Clark, Liam's history teacher. She found Liam at his locker on Thursday morning, the hall half empty before first period. "Walk with me," she said, her tone low. They slipped into an empty classroom, the blinds half drawn. "I spoke to Mr. Clark," she began. "He told me what happened in the hallway before all this. You said sure when he asked you to help pass out worksheets, correct?" Liam nodded slowly. "That's it," she pressed. "You weren't sarcastic? You weren't trying to be disrespectful?" "No," Liam said firmly. "I didn't even think about it. I was just answering." Mrs. Carter exhaled, her mouth tightening. "Then there's something you should know. According to Mr. Clark, Harris had been in a meeting with the school board earlier that day. Someone had complained about declining discipline in the building. He came into your class right after. I think you were just unlucky." The word stung. Unlucky, like being struck by lightning or hit by a car running a red light. Only this lightning wore a tailored suit and carried authority no one dared question. Later that day, in the staff lounge, Mrs. Carter overheard Harris speaking to Coach Reynolds. "Needed to make an example," Harris was saying. "Too many students are getting comfortable. A visible consequence sends the right message." Reynolds made a sound of agreement, though it lacked conviction. "Bare hands," though another teacher asked. That's a bit much. Harris's reply was ice cold. That's what makes it memorable. By Friday morning, Mrs. Carter had taken what she knew to Ms. Alvarez, the guidance counselor. Ms. Alvarez was already concerned. She'd been fielding questions from parents who'd seen the video. When Carter laid out what Mr. Clark had said, Alvarez's lips pressed into a thin line. "That's not discipline," Alvarez muttered. "That's abuse of authority." She called Liam into her office that afternoon. "Liam," she said gently, "I've been told exactly what happened. And I need you to understand, you didn't deserve what was done to you. Not even close." Liam's shoulders slumped, part relief, part exhaustion. "But what can I do? He's the principal. There are steps we can take," Alvarez said. "But it depends on whether you want to pursue this. It will get messy, and it won't be fast." He thought about the laughter in the bathroom doorway, the red light of the phone camera, the sting in his hands days later. He thought about Harris's voice, "When you're finished, you will thank me." "I want to," Liam said. "I don't want him to do this to anyone else outside that office." The walls of the school were still the same, polished floors, banners celebrating academic excellence, smiling faces in framed photos. But for the first time, there were cracks in the facade, and people were starting to see through them. The first ripple hit on Monday morning. Michelle Harper walked into the school office, still in her diner uniform, her hair pulled back in a messy knot. She wasn't there for a meeting. She was there to file a formal complaint. The secretary tried to direct her to Harris's voicemail again, but Michelle didn't budge. "No," she said, her voice steady but dangerous. "I'm here to speak to the superintendent's office." Today, by lunchtime, the district's Human Resources Department had an email from Michelle, complete with links to the circulating videos and a typed account of Liam's story. Ms. Alvarez, the guidance counselor, had already sent her own report, citing inappropriate disciplinary measures and potential health hazards. Mrs. Carter signed a statement supporting the claim, but Harris wasn't the type to crumble under pressure, at least not visibly. On Tuesday, he strode through the hallways as though nothing had changed. Students watched him with a mix of curiosity and fear. Some whispered about the investigation now taking place. Others claimed Harris had called the videos out of context and insisted Liam's punishment was a voluntary act of restitution. Voluntary. The word made Liam's stomach twist. That afternoon, a district official visited the school. She was escorted into Harris's office, the blinds snapping shut behind her. No one knew what was said, but when she left, Harris came out with his jaw set like concrete. The next morning, during the announcements, he addressed the student body. "Recently, an incident involving disciplinary measures has been misrepresented through incomplete information and online speculation," he said, his voice calm but clipped. "This administration stands by its commitment to maintaining respect and order. However, I acknowledge that perception matters, and I will be reflecting on ways to ensure our actions are understood in their proper context." It wasn't an apology. It was a performance, one meant for the district office, the parents, and maybe even the news outlets starting to sniff around. That evening, Michelle received a call. The district would be conducting a formal review. Until then, Harris would remain in his position. In other words, business as usual. But there were cracks forming. At the next school board meeting, 3 parents spoke during the public comment session. One held up a printed still from the bathroom video. "This is what was done to a minor in this building," she said. "Is this what we call education?" A murmur of agreement moved through the crowd. For the first time, Harris didn't look untouchable. For Liam, it was a strange mix of hope and dread. He wanted justice, but he also knew the people in power rarely fell far. He'd seen enough to understand that sometimes the truth didn't win, not without a fight that could cost more than you bargained for. And yet, the fight had already begun. The review dragged on for weeks. District officials came and went, interviewing staff, watching the videos, reading statements. For Liam, every day felt like walking through a fishbowl, eyes on him, whispers trailing in the hall. Some students treated him like a symbol. Others treated him like a cautionary tale. Through it all, Harris never flinched. He held assemblies, walked the halls, shook hands with visiting board members as though the controversy didn't exist. If anything, He seemed more careful now, his punishments quieter, more subtle. One gray Thursday afternoon, Liam was called to the guidance office again. Ms. Alvarez was waiting with a folder in her hands. "They've completed their review," she said. Her voice was careful. "The district found that your punishment was inappropriate in its execution, but they determined it didn't meet the threshold for termination." Liam stared at her. "So nothing happens. They're requiring him to attend a professional conduct seminar," she said. "And there will be a written note in his personnel file." A seminar, a note. That was it. The ride home felt heavier than the day he'd scrubbed the bathroom floor. At least then, there had been the hope that someone might care enough to change things. Now, all that remained was a quiet confirmation of what he already suspected. The system was built to protect itself first. That night, Liam sat at his desk, his sketchbook open. He drew a bathroom floor, every tile, every crack in the grout. But in the center, instead of a drain, he sketched a clock face. The hands were broken. Around it, tiny figures in suits looked away while a boy knelt alone. Emily came in, curling up on his bed. "Did they fix it?" she asked. He hesitated, then said, "No. But they can't pretend it didn't happen anymore." And maybe, he thought, that was a start, not enough, but a start. Because somewhere in the school, a teacher was watching more closely now. Some parents were speaking louder. And Harris, well, even kings get nervous when the walls of their castle start to crack. Liam closed the sketchbook and looked out the window. The night outside was still, quiet, waiting. And he knew one thing for certain. He'd never say sure the same way again. What do you think? Was this justice, or just another example of power protecting itself? Let me know in the comments.